You know that feeling when you're the last one in the building, when the hallway that's usually packed with 2,000 kids goes so quiet you can hear the vending machine humming 3 floors down. That's how this starts. And by the end, I need you to ask yourself, would you have stayed, or would you have run? I was 17, a junior at a high school outside Columbus, Ohio, and I had detention that Thursday for something so stupid I don't even remember what it was anymore. Talking back, probably. The kind of thing that gets you an hour alone in room 118 with Mr. Kessler, the detention monitor, who spent most of the hour on his phone and let us out early if we behaved. That day he let us out at 4:40 instead of 5. I was the only one who'd stayed the full hour because I'd fallen asleep in the back row. When I walked out, the hallway lights were already dimmed to the after-hours setting, that dull orange glow that makes everything look like a photograph from 30 years ago. I had to grab my chemistry binder from my locker before I left, because I had a test the next morning and I was not about to fail it. My locker was down by the science wing, past the gym, past the cafeteria, all the way at the end where the newer building connects to the old one. I want you to picture that walk, long stretch of empty tile, trophy cases catching the orange light, every classroom door shut, every window dark. I got to my locker, number 214, and spun the combination. I'd done it so many times that I barely had to think about it. I opened the door and reached in for my binder. It wasn't there. In its place was a folder I didn't recognize. It was a plain tan folder, slightly bent at the corner, like it had been carried around in someone's bag for a while. I figured maybe I'd grabbed the wrong locker out of habit, so I checked the number again. 214. Definitely mine. My gym clothes were still balled up in the bottom, my hoodie still hanging on the hook. I opened the folder because at 17, curiosity beats common sense every single time. Inside were photographs, printed on regular paper, photos of me. Not creepy long-lens surveillance shots, just normal pictures that make your stomach drop precisely because they're so ordinary. Me at my locker, me walking to the parking lot, me sitting in the cafeteria with my friends, laughing at something, completely unaware. Under the photos was a single sheet of paper with handwriting on it, not printed, handwritten in blue pen, pressed hard enough that you could feel the letters on the back of the page. It said, "You should lock your locker better. Anyone could get in." There was no name and no actual threat. Somehow that made it worse. Whoever wrote it wasn't trying to scare me. They were telling me they'd already gotten into my locker. I stood there in that empty hallway for what felt like 10 minutes but was probably 30 seconds, listening to my own breathing get loud in my ears. Then I heard the janitor's cart squeak somewhere near the gym, and it snapped me out of it. I grabbed the folder, slammed my locker, and walked, not ran, because some stupid part of my brain still cared about looking normal, straight to the front office. The office was locked. Everyone had gone home at 4:30. Of course they had. I called my mom from the front steps of the school, and she picked me up 15 minutes later, and I told her everything in the car. And she believed me, because why wouldn't she? I had the folder sitting right there in my lap as proof. We drove straight to the police station. An officer took a report, photographed the photos, bagged the note. He told us it was probably a prank, some kid who knew my combination, nothing to lose sleep over. I wanted to believe him. On the drive home, I kept checking the back seat at red lights. I knew how stupid that was. I checked anyway. For about 2 weeks, nothing happened. I got a new lock, the twist kind instead of the combination dial, figuring that solved it. I started walking with a friend to my locker instead of going alone. Normal life came back the way it does, the way you let it because you need it to. Then on a Tuesday, I opened my locker before first period, and there was a second folder. This one only had one photo in it, taken the night before, through my bedroom window, from what had to be the yard behind my house. Me at my desk, doing homework, lamp on, Curtains open because I never thought to close them. Whoever took it had been standing in my own backyard, close enough to see the pencil in my hand. The note this time said, "New lock, smart, doesn't matter." This person never touched me, never said a word to my face, never left a fingerprint the lab could match to anyone in the system. What they did was worse in its own quiet way. They proved twice that the places I thought were mine, my locker, my bedroom, meant nothing to them. The school put in new cameras covering the science wing after that. My parents put motion sensor lights on the house and a lock on the fence gate that hadn't existed before. The police opened a file, then a task force, because apparently mine wasn't the only locker. 3 other students had gotten folders that semester too. 2 boys and 1 girl, all juniors, all from different friend groups. Each folder contained photos, and each note was written in the same handwriting. It never escalated past the notes. No one was ever hurt. Whoever it was simply stopped, sometime around spring break that year, as abruptly as it had started, and the case went cold and stayed cold. I graduated. I moved away for college. I don't check my old locker number anymore. Obviously, some new kid has it now. Some kid who has no idea what happened in that same slab of metal 3 years before they ever spun the dial. But the part I still think about isn't the photos. It's that second note. Doesn't matter. The new lock didn't matter. The curtains didn't matter. Someone had figured out our routines well enough to watch us without ever being seen. I graduated, went to college, and eventually stopped thinking about that school every day. But every once in a while, I'll be alone somewhere and catch myself looking toward a window or checking a locked door twice. Because the thing I learned that year was simple. A locked door only helps if you know who's on the other side. Have you ever walked into a room and known, before you saw anything wrong, that you needed to leave? I ignored that feeling once, in my own high school, and I still think about what would have happened if I hadn't gotten out when I did. I was 18, a senior, and part of the homecoming decorating committee, which is how I ended up alone in the auto shop building on a Thursday night in October. Our school had an automotive technology wing, a separate building connected to the main campus by a covered walkway. Students used it during the day for classes, but after 4 o'clock it usually sat empty until the shop teacher, Mr. Alvarez, locked up for the night. That Thursday, our committee meeting ran until almost 8. We needed extra paint for a mural on the gym wall, and I remembered the auto shop kept a shelf of half-used cans that Mr. Alvarez sometimes let students borrow for projects. I figured I'd grab a couple without bothering him, since he'd already gone home. My friend Danny said he'd wait by his car in the front lot. I told him I'd be 5 minutes. The walkway lighting had been out for weeks, something the district kept saying they'd fix. It was properly dark by then, that mid-October dark where the air smells like wet leaves and your own footsteps sound too loud. When I got to the shop door, I expected it to be locked. It wasn't. I figured Mr. Alvarez had forgotten, or maybe another teacher was still around somewhere. I pushed it open and went in. Inside, it smelled like motor oil and rubber, the way it always did during class. Half the fluorescent lights were on, half were off, so some parts of the shop were bright and some weren't. I could hear the ventilation system running, that steady mechanical hum you stop noticing after a minute. Tires were stacked along one wall, tools hanging on pegboards above the workbenches, 3 or 4 cars up on the lift or parked under tarps for the semester's projects. I found the shelf with the paint cans near the back and grabbed 2 of them. As I turned to leave, somewhere across the shop, a metal drawer slid open, slowly. Then it stopped. I didn't think much of it at first. Old buildings settle, drawers stick and then give way. I figured it was probably just that, or maybe Mr. Alvarez really had come back for something. I called out, "Hello, Mr. Alvarez." Nothing. I stood there a second, paint cans in my hands, listening. The hum of the ventilation system was the only sound. Then I noticed the tarp on the car closest to me, the one nearest the back wall, wasn't sitting right. One corner was pulled up higher than the rest, like someone had lifted it and let it drop back down in a hurry. I heard a shoe scrape against the concrete floor, quiet, just behind that car. For a second, nothing moved. Then I heard a footstep behind the car, closer than the first one. I froze completely. I called out again, quieter this time, "Hello." My voice actually shook saying it. Nobody answered. I stood there for what felt like a long time but was probably 5 seconds, and then the bottom edge of the tarp lifted maybe an inch, just enough that I saw the toe of a sneaker underneath it before it pulled back out of sight. That was enough for me. I didn't wait to see anything else. I started backing toward the door, still holding both paint cans, and I dropped one of them. It hit the floor and rolled somewhere under a workbench, and I didn't stop to get it. I hit the push bar on the door harder than I meant to. It stuck for a second the way it always did if you didn't hit it right. And in that half second I heard fast movement behind me, shoes on concrete, someone standing up and moving. I got the door open and ran. I didn't look back. I heard footsteps on the walkway behind me for a few seconds and then I couldn't hear them anymore, but I didn't slow down until I saw Danny's car. Danny said I looked so pale that he thought something had happened to me. Then he actually looked at me and realized I wasn't joking around. I told him someone was in the shop building hiding and that I saw a shoe under a tarp. He didn't laugh. We sat in his car for a few minutes not really saying anything. We didn't report it that night. We were both scared we'd get in trouble for being in the building after hours in the first place, especially since I'd gone in to take paint without asking. So we just agreed to stay quiet about it and hoped it was nothing. 2 days later, Mr. Alvarez asked our whole homeroom if anyone had been in the auto shop building Thursday night. My stomach dropped. He explained that the security guard's routine walkthrough that night had found the back service door propped open and a toolbox moved from where it was normally kept. Nothing appeared to be missing, which apparently made it more confusing, not less. They checked the camera covering the main entrance, and it didn't show anyone going in or out that way, which meant whoever it was had likely come through the back, an area the cameras didn't really cover. I told him what happened. He didn't get angry about the paint. He just got quiet and said there'd been a couple of smaller incidents before, a missing set of tools, a door found unlocked one morning, nothing anyone had connected to anything at the time. He said the district was finally going to fix the cameras and the lighting because of what happened that night. Nobody ever found out who it was. The police talked to a few people, checked around the neighborhood, but there was nothing solid to go on. Maybe they wanted the tools. Maybe they were hiding there for some other reason. I never found out. What stays with me isn't some big dramatic detail. It's small stuff. I remember I'd stopped hearing the ventilation hum at some point because I was listening so hard for that scrape of a shoe again. I remember the exact sound the push bar made when it finally gave way under my hand. Ordinary sounds that I can still hear clearly if I think about that night too long. I graduated that spring. The auto shop is still there, still used every day. They fixed the lighting on the walkway and put in better cameras that cover the back entrance now. What bothers me is that I have no idea how long they'd already been in there before I opened that door. Ellis borrowed a pencil from me exactly 4 times that semester. I remember because he always gave it back at the end of class, never kept it, always the same brand, same worn-down eraser habit. I didn't think anything of remembering that. You don't think about the things you remember until later, when someone asks you to. I was 17, junior year, Ohio. My best friend was Derek, the kind of guy who narrated his own life out loud, mostly to make you laugh, half the time not even caring if you were listening. He had opinions about everything, and none of them were consistent week to week. That was Derek. Ellis showed up in October, transferred in from somewhere he never fully explained. I got the sense his family moved around for his dad's work, and he wasn't thrilled about it. Chemistry stuck us together as lab partners. He was decent at it, better than me honestly, and the first real conversation we had was him quietly fixing an equation I'd botched without making a thing of it. That's how it started. Not dramatic. Just a guy who was easy to be around. He started sitting with us at lunch by November. Derek liked him before I did actually. Ellis had this dry way of undercutting Derek's jokes that Derek respected, weirdly. "He's not trying too hard," Derek said once. "Most new kids try too hard." Ellis came over a few times to work on a world history project. My mom thought he had good manners. He was awkward about food, always said he wasn't hungry even when we were eating in front of him, which Derek used to give him grief about. There was this one afternoon, Derek doing an impression of our history teacher, badly, and Ellis laughing so hard he knocked a water bottle off my desk, and the three of us just sitting there in that stupid, ordinary, nothing kind of moment. I think about that afternoon a lot now, not because anything happened, because nothing did. He asked me once if I could give him a ride to the library after track let out, since his family only had one car most days. I mentioned I didn't stay for track on Mondays or Wednesdays. He said no worries, he'd figure it out. It wasn't until much later I realized I'd never actually told him which days I had practice at all before that. Small thing, I didn't clock it then. Another time, Derek was complaining that his dad was traveling again, some sales route that kept him gone Monday through Wednesday most weeks. Ellis just nodded along the way you do, didn't ask a follow-up, didn't make it weird. It was just something Derek said in passing, the way you complain about your parents to your friends. I noticed once that Ellis carried this beat-up spiral notebook everywhere, the kind every kid has for one class and never uses for anything else. I never thought about what was in it. Why would I? Everyone has a notebook. Derek stopped answering texts on a Thursday evening. Not immediately alarming, Derek's phone died constantly. He was famous for it. I didn't think about it again until Friday morning when he wasn't at his locker, wasn't in first period, and his usual seat in the back of English stayed empty all day. I texted him twice. Nothing, figured he was sick. Friday night, his mom called my house. Her voice had that particular calm that isn't actually calm at all. She asked if Derek had said anything to me about going anywhere after school Thursday. I told her no, we hadn't really talked that day. He wasn't in fourth period with me, and I hadn't seen him at lunch either. That's when it stopped feeling like a normal weekend. By Saturday afternoon, there were police at the house. An officer asked me straightforward questions when I'd last actually seen Derek, who he hung out with, anyone new in his life recently. I said Ellis. Transferred in October, ate lunch with us most days, good guy. The officer wrote it down without any particular reaction, just another name on a list of people to talk to. They found Ellis absent from school Friday too. His enrollment file had a current address, but when the school tried to confirm it, the family that lived there said they'd only just moved in and had no idea who Ellis was. The number on file rang through to a voicemail that was never set up. Nobody was accusing him of anything yet. It was just, nothing about him could be confirmed, and that itself was strange enough to sit with. Derek turned up Saturday night. A guy walking his dog found him near a self-storage facility off Route 9, sitting against the fence, cold, exhausted, but unhurt. He wouldn't talk about it much, not that night, not really for weeks. What came out eventually in pieces was that Ellis had texted him Thursday afternoon asking him to come look at something, car trouble, he said, near the lot behind the strip mall. Derek went because that's what you do for a friend. After that it gets fuzzy in the way Derek describes it, not because he doesn't remember, but because he doesn't want to walk through it out loud. He was in some kind of storage unit. Door didn't lock right. He waited until it was quiet outside and pushed it open and ran. When I saw him at his house that Sunday, he wasn't the same. Wouldn't really look at me. Kept glancing at the front window like he expected something. I asked if he wanted to talk and he just said, "Not yet," and that was the whole conversation. What they found afterward, going through Ellis's things at the house he'd apparently been staying in, which also turned out to be a short-term rental, not anything permanent, was that same spiral notebook. Pages of it weren't chemistry notes. Names, days of the week, times written next to them. A few photos printed, nothing elaborate, just kids walking to their cars in the school lot. Derek's name showed up more than anyone else's. Mine was in there too, less often. Nobody ever figured out what he actually wanted. The investigators said the pattern suggested he was watching for who was regularly alone after school, who had predictable routines, but that was as far as anyone got. No manifesto, no explanation, no clean answer. He didn't show up to be questioned. The rental was empty by Monday. That was it. That was the whole resolution. For a while after, I felt embarrassed for even bringing his name up to the police, like I was accusing a friend of something impossible. Then I felt defensive of him, actually, telling myself there had to be some explanation. Then I started remembering things differently. The ride to the library, the days he somehow already knew I didn't have practice. Derek and I don't talk the way we used to. It's not one conversation where it broke, it's just every time I'm around him now, I know what I brought into his life without meaning to, and he knows it too, and neither of us says it out loud. Not long ago, I was going through old messages and found the one where Ellis first asked about the library ride. I read it again, knowing what I know now, and it didn't look like anything. That's what still gets to me. It never looked like anything. That was the whole point. 3 high school horror stories. Which story got under your skin the most? Was it the locker photos, the person hiding inside the school, or Ellis and what he was really doing? Tell me your answer in the comments. If you enjoyed these stories, hit the like button, and if you want more unsettling stories like these, subscribe and turn on notifications. Until next time, stay safe.